Hi, this is Holly Neer calling from California, and you are listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Stay safe, healthy, and in good humor, and keep listening to music.
Now, we'll cover a little bit of history here, if that's okay. We'll try not to test your memory too much.
Oh.
We'll see how we go.
Well, being almost 71, there are some tests going on. But, I can probably remember when I was born and things like that.
Well, I will go back to the age of 10. I believe you auditioned for Columbia Records at that age.
Oh, my goodness, you've done your homework. Yeah, I had a singing teacher who had been working in San Francisco, and I lived about 100 miles north of there. Her husband got a job during the war up at a Masonite at a lumber corporation, so she came with him, and she was so bored. She'd been teaching in San Francisco. In fact, she was Johnny Mathis, the singer's teacher. And so she started a little music studio and taught piano and accordion and voice and, what else? I think, and maybe guitar. And I met her and began working with her. And I think that because I had a lot of natural talent from birth, she sort of saw me as a light in her life, something to do. And she took me on. And so we went down to Columbia Records, which is where Johnny Mathis was a recording artist, and he had set up for her various interviews for me to have with record executives there.
Now, you did a bit of acting back in the early years as well as music. Were you torn between two careers there at one point?
Well, I wasn't really torn. I was more whatever happened next.
Okay.
When I was in college, I was seen by agents in Los Angeles, and I started getting hired into films, and none of them were singing films. They were all acting films. And then I got into Hair in New York, and of course that was singing. And when I came back to California again, I met up with some people who were working with Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland and various people to put together a show for soldiers who were resisting war and racism from within the military. And we did a very different kind of show than, say, Bob Hope, which was kind of all gung-ho, right-wing military type of show. And ours was an anti-war show. And I got hired to go into that, or cast, I should say. I'm not sure we got paid. And that really changed my life. That, turned me around because I got to see the world through a social, political lens. And when I came back, I started writing songs, and I started integrating these stories into my concerts when I was playing at folk clubs. And the record industry wasn't really interested in going in that direction with me, so I started my own record label, and that was a very life-changing event. And from that time on, I did mostly music. I did an occasional TV show or film, but I was pretty much shifted over into music. That was 1972, I guess.
So in terms of songwriting, I'm assuming that would have been the more socially conscious and politically bent songwriters that were the ones that really inspired you?
Yes, in the sense that my parents were both political, very differently, but they were both political, and they got a record player. We lived out on a farm really far away from everything, and it was quite a thing they put together. My dad figured out how speakers and wires and cables all worked, and so he could plug the record player into a bigger sound system. And they started ordering records through catalogs. And so that was really our musical education, everything from the big bands to opera to musical theater, and then folk traditions. So it wasn't just folk music, and it wasn't just political music. It was all styles. But we would talk about the songs or listen to them through a little bit of a social context, because that's just who my folks were. Like even Rodgers and Hammerstein, who wrote wonderful musicals back then, there would be songs like You've Got to Be Taught from South Pacific, and we would talk about, well, what's that about, and of course it was about racism. And I don't think every family who was listening to big bands or musicals or opera, whatever. It was talking about the songs necessarily through that lens. But we were very fortunate to have that conversation around our dinner table.
Mm. So for you as a songwriter, was there a defining moment at all when you felt you were really developing a self-confidence in your writing?
I wrote some in high school. It was more, I don't look back at that as a very prolific nor very, I wasn't all that talented for songwriting. But when I got back from the trip with Singing for Soldiers, which was called Free the Army, and we had gone into the Pacific, we went to the Philippines and Okinawa, Japan, Hawaii. I learned so much. I'm a pretty good active noticer. You know, I pay attention a lot, and I started seeing and hearing things. And I was constantly writing in a journal. And I think eventually, when I got back, I realized that my biggest weakness in that show, even though I was assigned songs and I was assigned sketches, was that I didn't have any songs that reflected what I saw was going on in the world. Most of the anti-war songs, at least the ones I had heard in the U.S., had been written by men who were resisting the draft or who had political, social consciousness. But there I was, a woman in the middle of this war zone, and seeing how war affected women, how it affected children, how it affected... And I sort of on that trip really became a feminist unknowingly. And when I got back, I realized I don't have songs to sing about these things. I don't have anything to sing when I'm asked to sing about it. So that really, I think that was the moment where I said, I want to be a songwriter, because I want to have a toolbox when I'm invited to do something, and I want to be able to reach into that toolbox and bring out that which is essential to the moment. So, yeah, I think that was when I said, I want to be a songwriter. So I started working on trying to become a better songwriter. And for a while, I was quite rhetorical. I hadn't learned that wonderful balance between poetry and humor and storytelling, and it took some practice. But I fortunately practiced. I got better at it. I think I'm quite a better songwriter now than I was then. So that's good. There was progress.
Yeah. I want to talk about that Free the Army tour. I know it's a period of time you're very proud of. If you could pinpoint the major achievement of that tour, what do you think it would be?
Personally, it was that I learned about the military-industrial complex. I know that sounds to talk about rhetorical, but I mean that was a really big lesson, to realize how I had come more from peace and love. It's although I'd heard my parents talk at a much more deep level, but at 16 I was still kind of naive, and then I went on the tour. I must have been 20, and I came back with a much better and more serious understanding about the underbelly of our country and how long militarism had defined the economics and the direction of our country. And so that personally was really big for me, kind of moving from having an emotional sense about peace to having a much better economic and more sophisticated political understanding of it. So that was really important. But the tour itself, I think the biggest thing was that thousands of soldiers and men and women both, who were all in the military, showed up for these shows and really showed the world that the military was resisting this war. We had the soldiers who had been there on site, who were doing this work, were seeing that this was not what we were being told it was. We were not saving people from communism, and we were not really spreading democracy or any of those big terms that were used. And they started talking to each other, and they started writing, and they started getting active within the military. Some got thrown in a lot got thrown, something like 12,000 soldiers went to stockades for their resistance. And there were ships in San Diego. They started a whole movement, Stop Our Ship, SOS. And it was huge. And Nixon did not want anybody to know about that. I mean, the repression of information, talk about information being slammed now. I mean, that whole movement was really covered up. And there's a couple great films now that are trying to bring that out. One is called Free the Army, FTA, which we were featured in, but the other is called Sir, No Sir, Sir, No Sir, and you can find those films online. And it really talks about the GI movement, the soldier movement, and this tour. There's no way to know, but I feel this tour, especially because Jane Fonda was so famous, and Donald Sutherland, put a spotlight on these soldiers. The government was so afraid of us that there was one ship that was at Subert Bay that they didn't let the soldiers, they were supposed to be there for an R&R visit, and they wouldn't let them off the boat until we left town. They did not want the soldiers to see this show. So that, I think, when I look back, is probably the most important, and being able to really make those connections between sexism and racism and militarism. Some of the things that are said by the black soldiers and by the women in the film Sir, No Sir, it's extraordinary. And our tour allowed those military people to feel supported and be heard, and to see each other. 1,000 people were out in the field where we would perform, because and they'd look around and go, damn, there's a lot of soldiers who are feeling like I'm feeling. So I think that it was kind of visibility.
Did you have difficulty at times finding places to perform? Was there resistance there as well?
While we were on this tour, you mean, when I came back?
Yeah. Did you find places that weren't quite receptive to even having you there to perform?
On the FTA tour?
On the actual tour, yeah.
Yeah. That was all done by front people. There was a whole team sent out, so it was all set up when we arrived. It was an amazing front work that went on, and we did not have trouble finding places. We had a hard time finding places big enough, so we oftentimes played outside. There was one place where we found out that the military had handed out flyers telling all the soldiers that we were going to be in a different place than we were, just to create informational chaos. So the local organizers sent out a whole team of people to the place they'd been told, and they moved them all over, and we just delayed the performance an hour. And everybody got there, and the show went on. So it was pretty extraordinary. And we were young. My goodness, I was 20, 21. Jane must have been in her 30s. A lot of the organizers, the Filipinos and the Okinawans, they were all young people. Yeah. So I look at the young people now, and I just go, I have great faith in you, because I know that we were young when we did this really big thing, and we pulled it off. So we didn't necessarily know as much as we might have liked to have known, but we did it anyway.
And of course, the movie of that tour seemed to disappear off the face of the earth for many years, didn't it? Do you know the story behind that?
Well, it was in theaters when it came out, and then all of a sudden there were bomb threats, and one theater after another decided not to show it. And then it was gone. That was it. So, I don't know, and I don't know if I could say who that was, but there was definitely a campaign to shut it down. Yeah. And the good news is that it was found, and it's been refurbished. What's the word you use in film when it's all been
restored?
Restored, yeah. And I just went down to LA, and a lot of us from the cast met down there, and we showed it, and then Jane and myself and Rita Martinson and Michael Limo, different people who were in it, went up and did a panel from the stage afterwards. And it was amazing to see the film again, to just go, oh my goodness. I mean, it was extraordinarily radical, and also quite wholesome. That was the thing. I mean, it was radical, but there we were singing and telling jokes and doing sketches in front of 1,000 soldiers, all of whom were, farm boys who just had to sign up or who got drafted, and they were as young as I was. It was quite something.
And as you say, a life-changing moment for you, life-changing experience. After it was all over, did you have a period of adjustment for you, getting back into your regular career as a singer and a songwriter?
Yes, I did. I was supposed to come back and get back into my Hollywood life, right? I did a few other films, and I did, but it dwindled because my heart had gone in another direction. I did do one really good film when I got back, which was George Roy Hill did a film of Slaughterhouse-Five, and that's a really amazing film about Dresden. So I'm very glad I was in LA for that. But eventually, when I tried to record this new set of songs that I wrote when I got back from the trip, the recording companies that I had been talking to didn't really want the words to those songs. They didn't feel they would sell. And so I started my own record label. And had I known what that would entail, I never would have done it. So naivete really worked to my benefit at that point. And in hindsight, I'm told that it was probably one of the first independent artist labels, and certainly it was one of the first or second started up by a woman. And later on, quite a few artists created their own record labels, but I guess it hadn't been done that much. I didn't know that. But that company stayed together for about 18 years, and we recorded other people, including Inti Amani, the Chilean ensemble, and different artists around, one from Lebanon, a couple from Central America, Nicaragua, just voices that weren't getting heard. And then, of course, I recorded all my own work on that label. And then it went down, and after about 18 or 20 years or something, I was no longer part of the company, but it just started having really difficult financial problems, and that was kind of, I guess, more during the Reagan era.
Yeah. It was certainly a bold move to set up your own record label at that time. It was something quite rare. You didn't see any risk factor in it at the time, but like you said, you were quite naive.
Hey, Mom and Dad, I want to make a record. And I asked them if I could use their address so that when I was... One of the things that had happened, Jane Fonda met Tom Hayden, and they decided to do a tour in the U.S. to travel around the United States and really point out that if you got the American people to understand where their money was going, their tax dollars were going, and what was being used, and what kind of corporations were being funded, that it might help them understand that it wasn't just a moral thing about going to smash communism, but give them a better understanding. And so we went out and we went out twice. I think the first time was a 9-week tour, just using every resource that Jane and Tom knew across the country to set up these events. So I did write a bunch of songs in anticipation of that. And then we went out again, and I thought I really should have a record. And so I went in to be able to have, people were asking for the songs. So I went into a little studio with a high school friend of mine, and got a P.O. box in my parents' hometown and asked them whether they'd be willing to pack and ship the orders. And so it started out as a little cottage industry. And I look back at that, they were so sweet. My folks said, oh, sure, they were kind of in semi-retirement, and they set up a big table and picked up the orders every day at the P.O. box and shipped them out.
But like I say, record companies weren't that interested in you at the time and the types of songs you were writing. But there are many artists who have been very much involved in causes, like people like Jackson Browne, Bonnie Raitt, but they've managed to still get that attention commercially. Why do you think it's worked for them?
Well, let's see. I can't remember the timing of when Jackson started doing political stuff. He did a lot of had great pop music before he did. I actually don't know that. So, and by the way, I heard he just has some of this virus.
Oh yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. And you look at someone like Bonnie. Bonnie was very strong at putting herself out on the stage and doing events. Her songs weren't that radical. She had really wonderful songs that she did. But you have to look back at my first record. It had songs like genocide in it. Words like genocide. There was one called No More Genocide in My Name. kind of different than the kind of material that Bonnie was doing. I mean, we're friends, so I'm saying this with great respect. I think she's one of the most amazing guitarists and singer-songwriters. But she made a choice to do really wonderful material, but it's doesn't necessarily reflect in a very outspoken way her politics. Mm-hmm. Her politics are exhibited by where she puts her money, where she does fundraisers, where she shows up, what kind of statements she makes on behalf of. And she oftentimes would have black artists open for her because she knew that she walked in that tradition. And so she never denied that, and always really would find, where are the great old black guitar players that had laid the ground for what she did, and she would give them work. So she did her politics differently than I did. But I think if at that time, maybe you could do it now, I don't know, but at that time I was speaking pretty boldly about war and genocide and racism and gender.
So when writing issue-based songs, are you often aware or a bit wary of not trying to sound too much like you're being preachy and getting the message across? Is there a line there that you try not to cross?
Well, at first, when I first started, I wasn't good at that at all. My audiences didn't seem to mind because they were kind of being rhetorical in their own lives. They were very fist in the air and smash the state. But and I think they felt relief that I was not trying to hide any of the ideas in poetry or symbolism. So it kind of worked for me at the time. But as I became more mature, both political thinker and songwriter, I realized that there are different times for having different songs. So if I'm out at a rally in the rain on a flatbed truck with a megaphone, there's an appropriate song for that. And it may not be very pretty and it may not be very poetic. It just might be bold in support of striking nurses or whatever. And then a bit of outspoken, very specific lyric works fine. That same song sung if I did it at a concert in Carnegie Hall might seem out of place,
Yeah.
So I try to have a full spectrum of material that works for where I'm going to be, and I've also developed a sense of humor that's really been helpful, so that I've been able to write songs that are. I have a song, for example, I wrote recently called Coup d'etat. It's on the last recording. And it's using all sorts of French words to talk about military takeovers and coups, and but it's all very charming and funny. But it's quite specific, So it doesn't come across as rhetorical as much as there's a place for people to sing along, and there's a lot of laughter during it, but the discussion in that little 2-minute song has been had about that we might be having a coup right now, and it won't be the first time, nor will be the last, but a way to sort of find my way into a subject with an invitation. Hey, come on and look at this, because people say, yeah, but you're singing to the choir. And I go, well, not really, because you can have people who are in the anti-war movement who don't know anything, maybe aren't very experienced with GLBTQ issues. You can have somebody from the gay community that doesn't know anything about what happened in Chile with Pinochet and with the missing people. And you could have somebody who's quite astute around the environment, but they've never really thought about children and education. So this idea that we're all the choir, not so much. So what I think my audience likes about coming to the concerts and listening to the records is they know there's going to be they're going to be respected. They know that they're not going to be insulted by any assumption I have that they're stupid. I don't insult my audience at all. And they know they'll probably learn something, as well as have something they already know confirmed. So I've worked quite hard as a songwriter, both in storytellings, the way I introduce the songs, because I can write a song and introduce it differently depending on where I am, and let the song get landed in a different context based on how I introduce it. And I try never to say this is a song about. Because if the song is worth anything, you don't have to tell anybody what it's about.
Absolutely.
And I just learned things like that, and I weave these songs in stories that might seemingly have nothing to do with the song, and then just at the end wrap it around so the band can go into the introduction and it all makes sense. And I've worked really hard at that. And if you have listeners in your audience who are songwriters, I think it's worth practicing in the same way a cellist has to practice, or an athlete, or a doctor, to really, we change hearts and minds, as it were, and it really is worth it to think about it. You know, what am I doing here, and how can I be prepared for any situation? So I've been doing it 50 years, and I kind of like where it's ended up, but it didn't start there.
Reading a bit about you over the last week or so, I've seen you described as both an activist / songwriter, or a songwriter / activist. Do you see yourself as one before the other, or is it a complete package for you?
Probably as a child, I saw myself as a singer, entertainer. I wanted to be a Broadway star. Let's make that very clear. Star being the operative word. So I really did come at it from the entertainment point of view. But I also knew when I was a kid, I would lip sync to some of the great singers looking in the mirror, and some of those songs I would tear up while I was singing along. And I started going, now how come that one got me? Was it the way the singer was singing it? Was it the lyric? Was it the melody? And I started understanding that it was a combination of all those things, that the songwriter had made the song soar at a certain place that would just grab you and either make you sad or angry or happy, and make you want to dance or make you want to kiss or make you, all those things that songs can do. And I think that the activism part was understanding that art is effective, and that's nothing new. Artists have been affecting people and making them think and cry and dance, forever. And there's just a little nudge that can happen between letting an audience, or inviting an audience to have a feeling, and inviting them to have a feeling and then empowering them to do something about it. So that's where that activism comes in. It's not a lecture. It's not a should. It's getting that emotion to rise just to that place where they walk out and go, well, I didn't know there was a place called the School of the Americas in the United States that teaches dictators in Central and Latin America how to take over rising democracies. I mean, now that's a rhetorical sentence, but if I can figure out through a song or a really personal story or whatever to introduce that idea, and then someone in the audience is outraged that their money, their tax money, is being used to teach torture, they might actually join a group or do something or write a letter, become part of some organization that is actually trying to change that, and see that those organizations are having some success. So I know that puts it in a sort of big context, and I don't know if it answers your question, but I don't think it's cut and dried.
Yeah. You mentioned when you were younger, your big desire was to be, fame and fortune on Broadway, and okay, you didn't achieve that, but when somebody comes up and says to you these days that a certain song of yours has had a profound effect on them, I guess you can't put a dollar value on that, and that must make up for everything, surely. Well,
it does. It astounds me still, because with technology, you just have no idea who's listening to what or where or why and what happened. I was in Paris on a little vacation, actually, and I went to that big cemetery that's there. I'm trying to remember the name of it, where there's lots of famous people buried there.
All right,
and I kind of wanted to go sit quietly next to the burial ground of Edith Piaf and people like that. I just had this desire to go there. So I was a little lost. You get a map, and there were two women sitting on a bench, and I said, "Excuse me, can you help me find this?" And then she said, "Yeah, we were just there. We'll walk you over." And when I was done, I looked over, and they were standing quite far back, not bothering me at all, but they were still there. And I started to walk away. They came over and said, "Excuse me, we just have to tell you this story." One of the women was saying, "My parents take a trip every year, and they take one of us every year. There's four of us, and every fourth year we go. But then they take the wife and the husband." But she said, "I'm a lesbian," and they said I was always welcome to take the trip, but I could never bring my partner. And we sent my parents this song. It's called "Simply Love," which is about trying to understand and explain some of the passion and the love in a lesbian couple. And we played this for them, and this year they invited us both to come. And they said, "We can't believe that we've just run into you here because your song is why we were able to come on this vacation with our parents as a couple." So that one just about did me in. I mean, that was an amazing thing. And they asked to take me out to dinner, and under most circumstances, I would, probably say no. And I said, "Well, I can't. Yes, of course, that would just be divine." So it's those kind of stories are.
That's incredible, yeah.
Isn't it wonderful?
That's an amazing
I
story.
think that there's more like that, and an elder man who is the guard at, what do they call him? Not a guard, but they're at the backstage of a theater, security person.
Okay, yeah.
And he was about 70, 80 years old, African-American man. And it was during the mid-'70s, so we were doing some pretty outspoken lesbian material, and there was quite a large gay audience in the audience. We were leaving, and I remember when we came in thinking, "Oh my God, I wonder what this fellow thinks is going on here." And I was just going, he said, "Excuse me, I just want to tell you," he said, "I've been a closeted gay man all my life, and this was a lovely evening."
Wow.
I just, whoa. So,
those are priceless moments.
I never get tired of those stories.
Yeah.
I never get tired of them. And I never get tired of remembering the power of music and art if the artist will let themselves really enjoy the power of it, and not be afraid of it. I've heard artists saying, "Oh, we're not political." And I'm like, gosh, why would you want to say that? Rephrase it using a different word if you want, but what you're basically saying is you're not effective. Why would you say you're not effective? I'd love for artists to understand the power they have, and going along with it is taking a little responsibility of how you want to be effective. But it's just such a wonderful thing to be an artist. And right now, I don't know how artists are going to make it. They have been so hit hard by this stay home. I had a 21 city concert tour canceled. Boom, and I have a little cushion, but my musicians were counting on that. I mean, musicians are day workers, right? They work gig to gig to gig. And then my agent, who'd worked all fall to put together the spring tour, isn't going to get any commissions. It's just, and all the Broadway shows and Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center and the Met in New York, all shut down, all gone. And in my family, 9 out of the 10 of us work in the arts.
It's really hard to get your head around, isn't it? The effect that it's having.
It is.
Yeah.
It's been fun to watch artists say, "Okay, well, we'll do online this, online that," but in order for it to really reap some funds for them, whether they do PayPal or whatever they do, you sort of have to know how to reach your audience, and not every artist's audience is on Facebook, So
That's right. Yeah. You've been involved in teaching songwriting and performance. Can that be a learning experience for yourself sometimes?
Well, it's mostly a learning experience when I really do a bad job. I can walk off and go, "Well, that was just not very good. I just didn't figure out how to impart that information." But when it all goes, when it works well, it's lots of fun. When you can get a group of people to start being creative together. And when I can, for example, listen to a piece of work, someone says, will you critique this? For me to first work with them about whether they really mean that. Do you really want someone to critique this work? Did you just write it? Are you feeling fragile about it? Is it a difficult subject for you? I try to find out what's going on with them, because I have in the past taken them seriously when they say they want it critiqued, and I've just devastated a person, So I have to learn how to find out. This work is so personal and so emotional to people. Art is so close in, especially if it's any good. And so I think over time I've learned better how to first find out where a person is. For example, someone might get up and sing and play the guitar and have a song, and they want the whole thing, but they have to. I said, do you really want all three of those things critiqued, or is there something particular you want? Because maybe they're not a very good guitar player, and they're just starting to sing their own material, but they really are a songwriter. They don't really then want me to talk about their singing and their guitar playing,
Yeah.
Because I'm going to tell them the truth. So I've learned in teaching to try to understand what my job is before I go any further.
Mm. And before I let you go, Holly, looking back over your life and career, anything you would change if you had that time over again?
I would have I would have taken some business classes. I think it turns out that artists need to understand business. They have to be able to, even if they have managers and agents, they need to be able to look at what those managers and agents are doing. And it's really, the most comfortable is to turn it all over. But it's important to be able to understand the bottom line, to put together a budget, to be able to know what your negotiations are with your musicians, and to do it professionally rather than emotionally. And so I would say that's one thing I wish I had done when I was like right off the bat, 18, 19 years old, is get that out of the way. And I wish that I had spent more time learning to work on the piano, because I got so involved in singing that I let go of my piano lessons. I let go of any study of music from a theoretical point of view. And I do really well. I've figured out how to talk musicians without necessarily knowing at all, and I've gotten better over time. But it just moves it along so much quicker when you're writing a song, to be able to actually write it down if you need to, or be able to transpose the key, or be able to find a chord that you hear in your head but you just can't find it on the piano. That if you know theory, and you know the basic, and the piano is really the instrument to do it on, because you can see it; it's right there in front of you. And I just wish I write on the piano, but it takes me longer. I have to work harder at it than if I had just taken that time one summer to sit down and go, okay, I'm going to learn all the chords in every key. I'm just going to study that. I have a cousin who did that on the guitar. He just said, all right, this is crazy. I'm tired of hunting for things. And I wish I'd done that. Yeah. But, in general, I just feel pretty good about how things went, and mainly because I was good at falling down and getting back up. Uh-huh. If you're really fragile and you fall down once and you turn in your union card, then maybe this business isn't meant for you. It's tough out there.
Certainly is, and tough times ahead for all of us at the moment. Hey, Holly, thank you so much for your time.
Do other things besides interview people? Are you a musician?
No, I just do the radio show, and I run a radio workshop in schools, going around to primary schools.
Great!
That's my real
exciting.
job.
That's very, very fine. I'm glad to hear that. Well, hello everybody in Australia. I know you've just been through the fires, and now this. I went through the fires too.
You did,
and up here, I got evacuated a couple different times, and I'm just hoping that it's not frogs and insects next.
Well, hopefully when we
Isn't
get
that the order of things?
you're meant to be, yeah. Well, hopefully when we get through the other side of this and you're back out on the road again, you can include Australia on your road trip. It's been a while since we've had the pleasure of having you down here, I think.
Oh, a really long time. It must have been in the early 80s?
80s, yeah.
Way too, yeah.
With Margaret Roden,
Way too long.
From memory.
I know.
Yeah.
I've seen her up here since, and also with Judy Small. And, yeah. So I would love that. Let's make that a deal.
Done. We'll be here waiting for you. Thanks a lot, Holly.
Thank you. Take care.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.